Hello and welcome to Spokane County Spotlight. I'm Commissioner Al French, and my guests today are Chris Patterson, founder and CEO of Breakthrough Inc., and Chud Wendle, Executive Director of the Hutton Settlement Children's Home. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you.
So today we are discussing the topic of child welfare services in our community. Both of my guests here today run organizations in Spokane that provide services for some of our at most risk children in the region. I'd like to start the discussion off today by asking how each of you got started in providing these services for the children who are in need.
For me, it was because I was actually born and raised in Spokane, but I grew up in foster care. So for me, the passion of foster care was always a pretty big deal in improving and being able to provide what I would consider thinking outside the box.
Great.
I came into it a little non-traditionally. I grew up in a home that I had a mom that was a public school teacher, school board, and so I ran kids quite a bit through her. And she also served on the board of directors for 30 plus years for Hutton Settlement. And so I saw it indirectly through her. And I've always enjoyed kids, whether it's coaching. I actually was pursuing my master's in teaching at one point. But to be in the world of child welfare at this point in time, it wasn't one that was planned, but here I am and I'm absolutely enjoying it, loving it.
Oh, that's terrific. Well, thank you both for your passion around this issue. So Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit, or give us an overview of Breakthrough Incorporated?
Breakthrough provides services for youth that are 7 to 21 ages. They serve male and female. Each house is definitely set up for individual needs, so it's catered toward the child's individual needs and what they need. The issues focusing, whether it's reactive attachment, behavioral, emotionally disturbed, registered sex offenders, level 1, dual diagnosed, bipolar, autistic, schizophrenia, and the intense needs of wrapping around their plan so we can make a successful plan for their future and actually make it a plan where they can build off it to where they can focus on graduating and actually living successfully as much as possible.
So I understand we've got a little video. You want to set this up for us?
Yeah. So a couple years back, Rob and Nance had contacted me about talking about Breakthrough Incorporated and myself. I know that's something that's her passionate with foster kids, so it fit along the lines of what she was doing. And she wanted to have an interview with me, and we talked about just basics on why I do what I do, what's important, and the fact that it is important for Spokane and the community. I think that the kids deserve a chance. I think they've been bounced around enough.
Chris Patterson is talking about the kids he serves at Breakthrough, which is a BRS, or Behavior Rehabilitation Service.
We take very extreme kids. It could be dual diagnosed, bipolar, autistic, Down syndrome, very high needs, very high IQ, very manipulative, and can be very behavioral at times.
Breakthrough runs 6 group homes, 5 in Spokane and 1 in Kennewick. They can treat up to 30 teenagers at a time.
Every kid who walks through has a different opinion on what they have to do to survive, and it's always on a survival mode.
Chris knows a thing or two about survival. He grew up in the system. He went into foster care when he was 2, was adopted by a local family at age 4. But after family issues at 12 years old, he went back into foster care. Chris went to a group home, a receiving foster home, and then lived with foster family Ron and Carol Schultz in rural Elk until adulthood.
I had typical issues. Definitely had my problems.
Chris doesn't harbor any ill will against his adoptive parents or even his biological parents.
You can have heart and you can have faith, you can have all the belief in the world, but you really have to know what you're going to put yourself into.
And he says that's a problem with many people whose hearts are in the right place in helping kids, but really aren't prepared.
It's not always going to be the statement people like, but love doesn't heal everything.
What he says young people need to heal is someone who won't give up on them.
You want to know you're safe. You want to know you're not going to be victimized or abused, taken advantage of.
And they need families who won't be too soft.
You got to be able to set boundaries. You got to be able to show consistency, and everything else comes into play once you've set the structure.
That's what Chris hopes to do through his leadership at Breakthrough and the community. He's impressed a lot of people taking a role in Leadership Spokane, on a number of boards of directors, and even being recognized in this article in Spokane's Business Catalyst magazine. Chris admits that he's not a real emotional person, which is probably why he's so good at his job.
I definitely have hot spots, especially for things that I'm very passionate about, and that is the kids.
So thank you for that, Chris. So now, Chud, could you tell us a little bit more about Hutton Settlement?
Yeah. Unlike Breakthrough, Hutton Settlement's on a campus, 320-acre campus out in Spokane Valley. It consists of 4 cottages. The cottages it's a children's home, and the cottages have up to 8 kids in each home. They operate as more or less a community of families on the campus. Our kids have faced trauma of some kind. We'll take kids with some behavioral challenges, probably not to the extent that Breakthrough does. The secret to, sort of what I call the secret sauce in Hutton Settlement, is our house parents. And our house parents are the ones that are providing the stability, the anchor, the support, the discipline for the kids, so that each cottage has a set of house parents that act purely as their parents, and when it comes down to motivating, disciplining, and overall, the ages are 5 to 18. We admit we'll have placements anywhere between 5 to 14. It's a longer term type placement where the shortest is typically about 9 months, but we can see some up to where it's permanent when they graduate from high school, turn 18 and move on. Our children are mainstreamed back into the school district out at West Valley School District. And it's an amazing environment for these kids that have faced trauma to be able to be in a situation where there's some stability. We keep the relationships with their parents going. We call it a permanency partnership. So we keep the parents involved, whether it's weekend visits or the children going out to visit their parents in certain situations.
So you also have a video and stuff, and so you want to kind of just give us a little intro to that?
Definitely. So a couple of years back, we had the campus filmed, and on the video you'll see the cottages. You get to see the little layout and the traditional. There's the 4 cottages. Each one's built a little bit differently, but what you see will be the dining area, the kitchen, the bedrooms, and then obviously the campus as well, the 320 acres.
So on a day-to-day basis, what would you find to be the most difficult part of your job?
For me, it's the people. And every day, we have to have our game on, bring the positive energy. We are the stability in these kids' lives. And to have the right people is everything. So supporting our staff, supporting our house parents is the biggest challenge. They're facing day in and day out. They're facing the same things as parents that we might, as with our own kids. You put that on steroids, and that's sometimes what they're dealing with. So I think the people part is the toughest. We don't have house parents knocking on our door wanting jobs. It's a tough job, and it takes a pretty special person.
So obviously the two of you are not personally providing all of the care and services that these children need. Could you speak about the staff that each of your organizations depend on, and what does your staff do?
For me, the biggest thing for our staff is you look for that anchor staff that is actually going to really believe in the mission and vision of what you're providing, that they actually respect the fact that it's an honor to work with the kids and take care of the kids. So they're leading by example. You want them to be able to understand they're a mentor, and that everything they do is going to be a reflection with the kids, and they'll be monitoring that, and they'll watch you, what you talk, what you say, how you act, how you dress, how you interact if you're professional. If you look at somebody in the eye when you shake their hand, you have social graces. The kids have enough issues that they come to the table with that we want to make sure that we provide a stable environment, and the staff are key to it. A lot of what Chud said is spot on. You really want to be able to find those staff that are willing to take a lot of verbal abuse at times, sometimes physical assaults, and you're working with some really challenging environments, and the kids need to know that there's stability there.
Chud?
And it's going to sound similar with the house parents. We want them to engage. Don't want them to manage the kids. Don't want them to babysit the kids. We want them to engage. Go deep. Find out what's maybe holding them back on turning their homework in, rather than just saying get it done. That is probably the biggest thing, is the heart, and the heart leading to this engagement. One of the jobs that I think that I'm watching develop in front of my eyes is a youth development coordinator, and this person's working with the transition from these kids as they grow up, but specifically in high school. And our goal is to get every kid ready, whether it's a 2-year trade or university or maybe the military. And it's been fun watching her because she is passionate. She wants to see these kids move on, but she wants to get the kids ready. And when they graduate, they need to have that confidence, awareness of who they are, and head down the right path, because college might not be for everyone.
Right.
And that I'm loving watching that go down.
So what do you see is the most needed in the community to better address the requirements of providing services for at-risk kids?
You go for it. You have a little more experience.
I think the biggest thing is public awareness. And I don't mean just public, obviously legislatively is a big piece of it, and the public does control on who they vote, who they support, make them aware of what's out there. Mental health is obviously a very huge issue. It's not going to go away. It is going to increase, as we already know. And I think the biggest thing is making people aware of the services that you provide and the stuff that's actually really, really prevalent right now, because it does affect schools, jails, hospitals, everything.
I'm fairly new into this role. One of the eye-openers for me is how siloed some of these entities are. You have law, education, healthcare, therapists, and a lot of times they're addressing it in their own silo, but if they can cross over to the other sector, that's when some things happen, where maybe it's an awareness issue of a certain child, but it seems like that dialogue amongst the different sectors isn't happening. It's happening amongst in them, but at the end of the day, it's there's a lot of magic coming out of the school, a lot of opportunities coming out of school, and sharing that with whether it's law or the therapist, I think is a huge opportunity.
So how are children referred to your organization?
Our number one's therapist. Our number one referral is therapist. Number two would be out of the schools. So whether it's counselors, teachers, and that's relationship based. And we are not government funded, so we don't have a contract where we're getting placements on a regular basis from the state or the agency. But the third highest referral for us would be the state.
Okay. Chris?
For us, it's through the state. I have contracts with 2 different state agencies. We get them from, a lot of the times it's all from DSHS. So they could be CPS involved, it could be law enforcement involved, it could be a lot of things that are already taking place behind the scenes to put them in front of us. And others is voluntary placement through some of the parents.
So how long would you say the typical stay is for the children at your facilities?
For Breakthrough, it's different. Our focus is to hopefully reunify them with their immediate family or extended family, or if possible, put them in a foster home. For the majority of our kids. Other of our kids, because it's a voluntary placement, we work with such extreme behavioral and dual diagnosed or developmentally delayed, we'll be working with them clear into adulthood. And at which point we'll transfer. Our focus is to make sure they get a high school diploma, graduate, become a productive member, but also give them stability so that way they know where they're going to be going and not just drop them at the door and not provide some sort of backup with them.
So much like Breakthrough, our goal would be reunification with the families as well. But unlike Breakthrough, a lot of our kids that are coming are failed adoptions and failed foster care placements where they bounced around. So our average stay is probably a little bit longer. Ours is about 4 years. We also try to keep sibling groups together. So for example, right now we have a family of 6 siblings, 3 boys, 3 girls. And so that also, once you have one of the older ones and you see the little sibling, once they hit 5, and we have one right now, watch them grow up so you can see that where it goes the full 13, 14 years on campus. So that's not a rare occasion.
So what role do the parents typically play in this process while the children are at your facilities?
For Breakthrough, it's probably different in some aspects. We work really hard, so the courts, the social workers, the people we work with, try to make sure and get the parental involvement or grandparents or aunt and uncle, somebody that actually wants to be involved, so that we provide some sort of channel of putting the energy into an area where the kid knows they're going to go, if at all possible. The key is to try to make sure that the parents realize whatever they may have faced or came from, that we can work with them on providing stability, get them back in gear, make sure that they can get a job, get back to work, get their kids home, because nobody wants to manage their kids. They want the parents to manage their own kids and show them how to do it. That's the focus.
It's the parents are critical for us, and we go with the philosophy that it could be an out-of-home placement at Hutton, but it's not an out-of-family placement. So keeping the parents involved, whether it's twice a month, extended vacations is key, and it goes back to that stability. We do also provide quite a bit of support and counseling for the parents in regards to what's it mean to be a engaged father, engaged mother. And so having that is so important for the stability of the child.
So talk a little bit about how your organizations are funded.
For Breakthrough, we are definitely different than Hutton Settlement. We are funded by state and federal, more state. So I have contracts with developmental administration, and then children's administration. So because we work with 2 different populations of very severe and profound kids and very behavioral kids, our funding comes from state and federal.
Okay.
And this is, definitely quite a bit of difference. We take no, as I mentioned before, we take no public funding. We're privately endowed. So Hutton Settlement was founded in 1919 by Levi Hutton, and he had the foresight to endow it with commercial property. So our operating budget is generated off of rental income from commercial property throughout Spokane County, which makes it, it makes it interesting because that allows us to do and maybe invest in certain areas that we might not be able to under contract. But on the other side of it, there's some things where we get knocked off the radar of the state, and so it's a balancing act. But at the end of the day, it's nice to be able to to run an organization that the government, we don't require anything from the government or the taxpayer.
Well, and there's certainly a high degree of unpredictability when you're dealing with the legislature and, you know, what they're going to be funding and what they're not going to be funding, especially with as they're struggling with the McCleary decision. And it's clear that education is a challenge for the state right now and stuff. So not being part of that financial mix is probably a breath of fresh air, and also takes away a lot of the tension about each legislative session, and will they provide the funding necessary to maintain your organization?
You know, and it's a good point. We have a board of 21 women that manage it, and for them to long-term plan, they can long-term plan. They're very good at long-term planning, but they know what the funding is, and that's a key part of planning.
Yeah, predictability is a wonderful thing. So what are the current trends for children's welfare in Spokane County?
Well, that's a tough one. I know the biggest focus, and I can't speak for state agencies, but from my experience working with them, a lot of the administration, a lot of social workers have a huge heart working with the kids, and they do want to improve the quality of care. They want to see it improve. They want to see contractor providers doing what is expected, providing those services, doing exactly what's expected, and actually being quality care, not quantity. And I think the biggest issue is just making sure that you can kind of predict, which is really hard in social welfare. The needs for kids have become so extreme, and the issues that they are facing now are much more extreme than they faced in the past.
Yeah.
And once again, I'm coming into a new sector that my eyes are open, and I've been humbled. And one of the biggest things I've been just floored on is the number of homelessness youth in our community. I was just told recently that there's 400 homeless students at Rogers High School, another 100 up at Ferris, and that just blows me away. So we're seeing more demands on our services from these, you know, whether it's the counselors or therapists that are trying to place these homeless kids into out at Hutton.
So how do each of you define success for the children in your organizations?
For me, I measure it one day at a time. And I get that question a lot, is how do you measure success in the kids we work with? I think you can measure one less behavior, improved grades, going to school full time, not treating people with disrespect, basic civility, and just making sure that they understand you're there actually to help them, and they start to buy into it and they trust you and respect you. It takes a long time to get that.
And I'd agree. Short term, it's are they showing up at class? Are they getting their grades? Are they doing their chores at home? Long term, our goal with the kids when they leave, whether it's to be reunified with their family or when they graduate, is to leave to leave Hutton as living an independent and fulfilled life, basically giving back to the community. We want to see them give back. Obviously, the community's been so fortunate to provide this Hutton settlement to them, and the stability and these opportunities. We'd love to see them give back.
So you mentioned something a little earlier in terms of a lot of your kids end up going to West Valley School District. How did that relationship develop? Or
it goes back I think this one goes all the way back. So we'll be 100 years old in 2019. The partnership with West Valley School District has been unbelievable. They are so supportive. Matter of fact, they provide us our internet services. I mean, it's just that partnership. Whether it's a child that's underperforming maybe in school that they know have more potential, they're on top of it. They're in touch with our house parent. They feel that it's a true partnership to be able to get these children through and want to see them graduate. It's a pretty amazing opportunity and pretty amazing partnership.
So we're reaching the end of the show. So in the last few minutes, talk a little bit about the messages that you would like to leave with our viewers.
I'll let you go first.
Okay. Well, I think the whole children's welfare trend right now is a little bit intimidating and daunting. And I do think the community needs to rally around it from the standpoint of let's talk about it, let's address it. And Hutton Settlement is not the end-all solution. It is a piece of the the whole care piece, and it's an option, it's an opportunity. We want to be there for the right child. And so if we can team up like Chris and I and work and make sure what's right for Spokane, that's what's right for Spokane. So it's just, we're fortunate to be part of Spokane. I think it's one of a kind to have a privately funded children's home here, and part of it takes the partnership of the community and the giving back, as we do appreciate that.
I agree. And for me, it's much deeper, because I was saying, growing up in foster care, I've always felt that I wanted to pay it back. I mean, there was a lot of people that surrounded around me, and I met a lot of different personalities that helped me grow up and actually mature. And I think the biggest thing is to get the community to understand it's a very big picture. It's a systemic thing that you all have to participate in, because it does affect every aspect of our lives, whether it's education, law enforcement, judicial, courts, juvenile detention, hospitals, psychiatric care. Everything does wrap together. And if you can get everybody together and make a form of coalition, or at least an understanding of communicating, it can improve.
Well, and I'm glad you touched on the judicial system, because if these children don't have that mentorship, that educational opportunity, that exposure to what is the difference between right and wrong at that early age, then they end up becoming residents at the Geiger Correction Facility, the juvenile detention facility, and ultimately the jails. So what you do is part of that long-term solution about how do we keep people out of the judicial system, how do we keep them out of jail, and provide them that input. Because when I have conversations with folks at Geiger, it's amazing to me how many of them say, well, nobody told us the difference between right and wrong. I mean, one of the trainings that they do out at Geiger is moral recognition, and just teaching some of the things that we assume are basic, but that's an assumption that is many times false. If you don't have a parent that is at home, they're working, they're latchkey kids, it's difficult to have that network. And you provide one of those key links for the community that helps not only make life for those kids better, but it makes life for all of us in Spokane better, because we've got contributing members to the society, as opposed to folks that we have to deal with in a rehabilitation kind of a fashion. So thanks for everything that you do to keep our children safe and protected in our community. And thank you for joining me today. I'm afraid that we are out of time. I'd like to thank my guests, Chris Patterson and Chud Wendle, for joining me here today. Again, I'm County Commissioner Al French, and thank you for joining us on Spokane County Spotlight.